Hey guys, this is Smithy. Welcome to my channel. Today's video is the third part of the series that we are doing, and this series was inspired by my friend Corley Rose Beauty. I'll link her channel in the description box below for you guys. Today's video is going to be my best eyeshadow palette from my best favorite indie brands. So without further ado, let's dive right in. I'm going to go in no particular order at all. I have a bunch of palettes in front of me. We're just going to grab and talk about it. The first indie brand that I have to talk about is Dominique Cosmetics, and my favorite palette without a doubt. If you guys have been with my channel from like early times, you know this palette is coming, and this is my Dominique Cosmetics Latte palette. I absolutely love it. I have used it so much. All these tones are just perfection in my book. They blend really well. If you love your cool tones, warm tones, neutral tones, this palette is so pretty. She only has like 3 shimmers, and this is not like duochrome, multichrome by any means. These are like smooth shimmers, but they pack like a punch on your eyes. Really pretty color story. I have like several videos using all these palettes on my channel, so if you want, just give it a search and I'm sure that you'll find it. But this is definitely one of my favorite palettes from Dominique Cosmetics. The next brand that I have to talk about is Sugar Drizzle Cosmetics, and this is the palette that I chose, and this is the MILF palette. Now I know that I've turned a lot of people to buy this palette, and this for a reason. Like, this is such an amazing color story with such smooth multichromes and duochromes. This is an all shimmer palette, so if you are a person who just wants to dip your toes into like multichromes and duochromes, and you're a big fan of purples and greens, this is the palette for you. Like, you will definitely not be disappointed. You'll absolutely love it. That's my guarantee. This is such an amazing palette, and this is definitely my favorite out of the lot that they have. And I almost have everything that Sugar Drizzle owns, so yeah, that's saying a lot, and this is my favorite. The next brand that I have to talk about is Dose of Colors. And without a doubt, this palette definitely has a space in my heart. This is just, I feel like, the best collaboration palette that ever has been like done. And this is the Friendcation palette by Dose of Colors. This was in collaboration with Katie and Desi. This, oh my god, you've seen me use this palette so many times on the channel and in my everyday life. I generally go for these tones. Like, I often dip into this palette for like the mattes. The shimmers are like now old. It's like 2-year-old business, I feel like. But these shimmers were so gorgeous at the time that it was there. Now, even though it's gorgeous for sure and it is smooth, but it's definitely lost its, like, you know, shebangness. If this you say is pretty, you should have seen when it came. Like, it was so beautiful, and the mattes are amazing. This, without a doubt, like, put my stamp on it. This is my favorite palette that Dose of Colors have come out with. I'm not gonna swatch any more eyeshadows because I have done quite a bit of swatches like on this channel regarding all of these palettes, and I don't want this video to be like a million years long. Okay, now let's talk about another brand, and we're going to talk about Sigma, and this is definitely my favorite palette that Sigma has done. This is neutral, but special neutrals. It's so pretty. If you are a warm tone person, these neutrals are really amazing. I really love these tones on me. I love that there are mustardy tones, there are like rosy tones, there are like neutral tones in this palette, and you can go from like very light to very deep by using just this palette, and this is truly spectacular. This is the palette that I generally like get into like the fall season as well as summer season. I love to wear these tones during that season, and this is definitely one of my favorites. I have several of Sigma palettes in my collection. This definitely stands out. Now let's talk about It's Well Cosmetics. You guys know they've not done one palette that has disappointed me, and I have them all. But by far, this is my favorite palette that they have done, and this is the Flare Collection Remixed palette. I have pan going on. That's saying so much. Like, this is definitely my favorite shade out of the bunch, and you can see that. I definitely have pan in this and this. I use this so much. This is such a shebang kind of shade. This shade is the smoothest out of the shimmers that you see in front of you, but this all over the lid by itself, it's such a pretty shade. I definitely need to bring this on. Like, this, without a doubt, is like my favorite favorite palette that Itzbel has done. I mean, whatever shimmer shades they do, they just excel in it. And I love the 9-pan like quality and aspect of this. Love, love, love this one. Okay, now let's talk about Laura Lee Los Angeles and my favorite palette that she has done in terms of color story. This is like me in a palette. I love my rosy browns and you know that, and I am talking about my Nudie 2 palette from them. It might just look and feel like a meh palette, but on the eyes, they are so special, so spectacular. This is something really, really gorgeous. Like you can definitely go warm tone to cool tone or neutral tone in this color story. And these two shimmers are like my favorite. It feels like a little bit more on like a grittier side when you touch it, but on the eyes, it gives like such a, you know, it's very similar to what I'm wearing today, and it's so sparkly and like shimmery on the eyes. It's really, really, really pretty. By the way, on my eyes, I'll come to the palette that I'm using, but on top of that palette, I also use Pretty Sphere Face Jolt. That's the, you know, the sparkliness that you see. But yes, Laura Lee Los Angeles Nudie 2 is my favorite. Okay, let's talk about a new brand that I tested out this year, and this is the only palette that I have from them, so I would just include this palette, and this is from Wicked Widow Beauty, and this is their Yallternative palette. The packaging, A++. Is it feasible to store? I love that this thing just comes off and it is magnetic. You can customize and everything, and it also comes with a mirror, which is all good. Because this palette has like glitters included in this palette, this is not the right palette for me, I would say, but they do have like a shimmer version, multi-chromes, also on their channel. This palette was received by PR and they kindly sent it to me, and I'm very, very thankful for that. But if it was me purchasing the palette, I would have taken the shimmer version instead of the glitter version, just because I don't wear glitters on my eyes that much. But otherwise, the mattes are really, really pretty. This is like a very satin kind of a shade. This shimmer, this is like a regular shimmer. It's very, very pretty. Really like this palette. But because of like the glitter, it's not like one of the outstanding palettes that I have in my collection. But nevertheless, I definitely wanted to include this because this is a brand that makes such a beautiful color story palettes, and the packaging is absolutely stunning. If you are a collector, you would absolutely love it. Okay, now let's talk about Odens Eye. This was so difficult for me to pick one palette because they do like some of the amazing unique color stories, and I had to show two. I really had to show two because I cannot pick in between these babies. Like if it was like a year back, I would have definitely picked one over the other. But this year, I have used the other palette also so much that I have to pick both of these. And I'm talking about Giant Wolves and Red Dragon palette. Giant Wolves is definitely my cool tone people palette, and Red Dragon is definitely more on the warmer tone side. So let me open it and show it to you. This is the Red Dragon palette. Really, really pretty. This time I was like very, very much into these kind of color stories, so I use this quite a bit. But I love Giant Wolves for the uniqueness and the tones. I really, really love this palette. Like if it was me last year, I would have like hands down said Giant Wolves because I used this so much and I was more of like a cool tone color story person. But this year I dipped into both, like warm tone as well as cool tone, and I have used both of these palettes so many times this year that I cannot even say. I could not choose. Could not choose. Okay. The next brand that I want to talk about is Sydney Grace, and without a doubt, this palette holds so many sentiments in my heart. This palette is so beautiful, such an amazing color story. And I'm talking about my Tiny Marvels palette, which was in collaboration by Mel Thompson here on YouTube. She really left behind a legacy, and I miss her like almost every day of my life. I didn't even know her personally, but that's the impact that she's left. And this color story is truly, truly, truly amazing. Really love it for like the fall season, spring season. Such pretty color story. She's like all rounded, all the seasons in one palette, and this is by far the most spectacular quality eyeshadows that you would find. Sydney Grace just excels it in that category, and this is stunning, absolutely stunning. So my favorite would be Tiny Marvels from Sydney Grace for sure. Now let's talk about Hindash. I don't think I've used this palette so many times on this channel just because it's an all matte palette, and you know me, like I always use my mattes, but I cannot complete a look without my shimmers because I love shimmers. But this palette has come in handy in my everyday life so much. I hope when I open this you can see how much I've used this. And I'm going to talk about the Beautopsy palette. I also have his the second palette that he came out with. What was it? Monochromance. I also have the Monochromance palette with me, but by far my favorite is this Beautopsy palette, and it's just sheerly because of the color story. This is just perfect for an everyday look. You can see like how much I've used this. I use this almost every day of my life. When I'm like in a rush going to office, I can use all these shades all over my face, and this is like an eye and a face palette, so you can use that. I use like this and this mixed together as my bronzer. I use this underneath my eyes, and to set my face I constantly use like this area as like my blush shade, and I definitely use all of these shades for like my eyes. And then I just tap it off with like one of my ColourPop Super Shock shadows, and that's generally my office look. And this has come in super handy. Now I really feel like the quality, you cannot mess up with this eyeshadow palette. It just blends by itself. If you have like some kind of a harsh edges on your eye, you just tap this and that will just go away. Let me show you. I don't know if my eyeshadow is like messy or not, but let's say if there's anything that is like messed up, I just dip into like one of the shades, mainly closer to my skin tone, and just go over the edges, and that just blurs out everything. Can you see that? Can you see that? It just blurs out everything, and that's the main reason why I use this. It's just so smoothing on the eyes and on the face. You definitely cannot go wrong with this, and this definitely has stood up in my collection. Definitely I'm thankful for this because I got this as a gift, and I am so glad that I got to try this. Like I really love this. Okay, the next brand that I have to talk about is Hipdot, and my favorite palette from Hipdot is the Zion palette. Surely because of the color story. I love my purples and my warm tones, and this, I love it. Like it has some warm tones, it has some neutral tones, it has some like cool tones on this side. It's really a well-rounded palette. I love to take this out in the summer season because that's when I generally use this palette, like spring summer transitioning area. But the quality is absolutely amazing. I love this palette. Love this shade for the shimmers, and all the mattes are beautiful. Now all the brands that I have is like so pretty. Okay, now let's talk about Simply Posh Cosmetics. This is another brand that I tried this year, and they swept me off the feet. Like they just swept me off the feet with this palette, and I absolutely love this palette. And this is the Genuine Gems palette. If you are into jewel tones, this is the palette to try. Look how pretty this palette is. And the shimmers, the this middle row is completely full of duochrome shimmers, and they have like lighter tone mattes and the deeper tone mattes in either of the corners, and they are just stunning, like absolutely stunning. I've done like 3 looks using this palette on my channel before, and they're just beautiful. This whole palette is customizable, so I often tend to use like my special shades into this palette and incorporate within this palette, and that aspect of the palette, like the customizable aspect of the palette, it just takes it to another notch. I absolutely love this palette and would highly recommend the Genuine Gems palette. Okay, now let's talk about Blend Bunny Cosmetics. Oh my goodness, I didn't know that I would love or I would fall in love with colors the way I did with this palette. Is just truly outstanding. And my favorite palette that they have in their collection is definitely the Primal palette. From the packaging to the shades that they chose inside, it's just truly amazing. Again, if you are a colorful, even if you're not a colorful person, I dare you to try like Blend Bunny Cosmetics, and I am so sure that you'll fall in love with colors. This is such a pretty color story. Such pretty shades were included in this palette. My favorite column is definitely this one and this one. I was very scared of like playing into greens and yellows, but I have played so much into this palette. Even have like a dent in this green, which is Toxin. That's saying so much. I have like a significant amount of dent in Exotic and Lethal because those are like my most used shades of this palette. I've also often used this shade Nocturnal. That's how I fell in love with using blacks, because I never used to use blacks on my eyes, and this definitely has made me use more of blacks. I don't use much of white shade, but black is definitely come in handy. So yeah, I love this palette, guys. I really love this palette. I feel like for medium tan skin tone, this palette is so amazing. If you want like one rainbow palette in the collection, I feel like this is amazing. So yes, Blend Bunny Primal is definitely my favorite. Okay, now let's talk about Glam Light. I have so many favorites from Glam Light. Like, whatever palettes I've tried from Glam Light has definitely like A++ quality, but by far the most used palette in my collection from Glam Light is the Chocolate Martini palette, and this just stood the test of the time. I just often use this palette over and over again. This is not a neutral palette by any means. Like, you can go with like wearable rosy tones, but also with the addition of this orange and purple, it just has like that interesting tones with these bronzes and golds. It's so pretty. I feel like this is so much like spectacular when you put it on the eyes. The shimmers are amazing. The mattes blend beautifully. This shade is so beautiful for like a smoky eye look. It's so pretty, so pretty. I absolutely loved the whole Happy Hour collection. I also have the green palette, the Dirty Martini palette also with me, but this definitely stands out because I'm a neutral person, and this is just stunning. Okay, two more brands to talk about. Let's talk about Gourmand Girls. Gourmand Girls, again, is a brand that has like such spectacular color story, and they have just improved their quality palette after palette after palette. When I think that I had enjoyed like Gourmand Girls, the Radioactive palette, because I use that a lot, I love that baby. I really love. And then I tried the Ethereal palette, and I was like, wow. Like, wow, the shadows, the shimmers, everything was like at par excellence. And then they came out with the Spooked palette, and I was like, what? This was stunning. Like, because it has mattes and shimmers and multichromes all included in it, this is like fall in a palette, Halloween in a palette, jewel tones in a palette. This is just stunning. Absolutely stunning. This is the palette that I have on my eyes today. I have this on my crease. I also have this on my outer corners. I have Spirit in between like the meshing up shade. And then I did have the Pretties for Your Face Jolt all over my eyelid. And that's what I have. I really love. I also have this Spook shade, the black shade, on my extreme outer corners and on my lower lash line. And I love it. I absolutely love this palette. I cannot wait to see what Gourmand Girls has for us in the future, because they are like absolutely excelling in the indie brand quality. Like, I love it. All these indie brands are so good. Like, they have just knocked off the drugstore and the high-end category by like miles. Like, oh my god, I love it. The last, certainly not the least, the indie brand that I have to talk about is Adept Cosmetics. Adept Cosmetics is also a brand that I've loved everything that I've used from them. The first palette that I tried from them was Minka palette, and Minka is stunning if you are like a glam person who loves to wear like shimmery eyeshadow and like walks like a disco ball. Like, I love it. I absolutely love it. I just was so stunned by the quality that I had to get this palette, and I am so glad that I purchased this palette. And this is like my kind of color story, and for that sheer reason I have to choose this one. It was very difficult to choose between Minka and this one, but I have to choose Heather Austin's palette. This is just stunning, like absolutely stunning. The shades that were chosen, the tones that were chosen was just amazing. All of these just shift from like different colors and different angles. When you think that it is like one tone eyeshadow, it just shifts to so much. Like, these shadows look like meh, but when you see them, it's just outstanding. Let me just show you a few shades because it's worth showing. Like, look at the tones. Look at the tones And tell me if that's not spectacular, I don't know what is. It's just so stunningly beautiful that I want to slap someone. Like, look at that, look at that. It's just beautiful, drop dead gorgeous. And oh my god, this year's ranking video for eyeshadow palettes is gonna be tough. It's definitely gonna be tough because all these palettes are so gorgeous, and I cannot wait to see what these indie brands have for us in future. I loved filming this for you guys. I really would love to hear what is like the most favorite eyeshadow palette that you have in your collection. Sound it off in the comment section below. But if you like this video, you know what to do. Do give it a thumbs up and also subscribe to my channel if you haven't already, and ring that notification bell so that you're notified every time that I post next. I generally upload 3 videos every single week, every Tuesdays, Thursdays and Saturdays at 9 AM Eastern Standard Time. Until next time, I'll see you guys in my next video. Bye guys.